The sound of the rain hit the hangar roof like applause when Olivia Carter turned and laughed. Her voice cut through the air, sharp and cold. "So you really think you can fix a $15 million jet engine with those greasy hands?" The room went silent. Every mechanic froze. All eyes fell on the man in the stained coveralls. Ethan Cole. He didn't flinch. He simply wiped his hands on a rag and looked at her with calm eyes that didn't match his rough exterior. Olivia smirked, her heels echoing against the polished floor. "This isn't changing oil on an old pickup truck, Mr. Cole. This is aerospace engineering." The words dripped with arrogance, and a few people even chuckled behind her. But Ethan didn't react. Deep inside, behind the quiet stare and oil-stained fingers, was a man who once designed engines far more advanced than she could imagine. She saw a mechanic, the world saw a nobody. But soon, Carter Aviation would learn the truth, and it would shake everything Olivia Carter believed about power, success, and what it really means to build something that lasts. The camera fades from the blinding lights of the hangar to the soft hum of a quiet morning in Maple Ridge. A kettle whistles on an old stove, and Ethan Cole moves through a tiny apartment above a roadside diner. The world outside is still dark, but inside, there is warmth, the smell of coffee, the sound of a father's steady breathing as he flips pancakes for his daughter. "Rise and shine, Grace," he says gently. A sleepy 12-year-old appears, her hair messy, her backpack half-zipped. She smiles when she sees the plate waiting for her, perfectly cut strawberries on top. They eat together. The silence between them filled with a kind of peace the world rarely offers. Before sunrise, Ethan locks the apartment door, walks her to the bus stop, and watches until the yellow school bus disappears around the corner. Only then does he head toward Miller's auto repair, his work boots splashing through puddles. No one at the shop knows who he used to be. To them, he is just a quiet mechanic with magic in his hands, the man who can fix anything. They have no idea that the same hands once built engines for Threshold Aerospace, the military's most secret project. At night, the apartment glows softly under a single yellow lamp. Grace does her homework while Ethan checks the day's receipts. Sometimes she asks questions about airplanes, and he answers with the kind of patience that only love can teach. When she goes to bed, Ethan opens a small metal box hidden beneath the floorboard. Inside are medals, patents, and one folded letter with his name written in delicate handwriting. Sophie Cole. The letter is worn, touched too many times. He reads it again, though he already knows every word. "If anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll be there for Grace. Not as a hero, not as a genius, but as her father." Tears blur the ink, but he smiles through them. He whispers into the quiet room, "I'm keeping that promise, Sophie." Every single day, the camera lingers on his tired eyes, reflecting the photo of a woman with a kind smile, then pans to the wall behind him. Grace's school certificates replace the framed awards of his past life. The contrast is heartbreaking and beautiful at once. Outside, a train horn echoes through the small town. Ethan looks out the window, watching the lights fade into the night. Somewhere deep inside, the fire of the engineer still burns, but his heart belongs to something greater now. He takes one last glance at the letter before closing the box and locking it again. Tomorrow will come early, as it always does. He will wake before dawn, make pancakes, and keep his promise. And far away, in a corporate tower of glass and steel, Olivia Carter is about to discover that the man she mocked has a story powerful enough to dismantle her entire world. The storm arrived like a warning. Wind howled across the runway, rain slicing through the air as thunder rolled over Carter Aviation's private hangar. Inside her glass office, Olivia Carter stood frozen before the call that every CEO dreads. The Bennett jet is grounded, engine malfunction, they're demanding answers. Her pulse quickened. Richard Bennett was not just a client, he was the client. The billionaire whose investment could push Carter Aviation into a global contract. Losing him meant losing everything she had built. "Dispatch the Boston team," she ordered, already slipping on her coat. "We can't," her operations chief stammered. "Air traffic's locked down. Visibility 0. No one can take off in this weather." For a moment, Olivia's reflection stared back at her from the window. A woman who never accepted failure, now trapped by a storm she could not control. "Then I'll go myself," she said. 2 hours later, her black Range Rover tore through the rain toward Maple Ridge Regional Airport. Lightning flashed across the horizon as she rehearsed apologies in her mind. When she arrived, chaos had already taken hold. Bennett's security team surrounded the jet while the billionaire himself paced near the terminal, shouting into his phone. His frustration radiated through the air like static. Olivia stepped into the hangar, soaked but composed. The local technicians hovered nervously around the aircraft. One of them gestured toward a familiar figure inspecting the exposed engine panels. "Ethan Cole." She froze. "What is he doing here?" she demanded. "He offered to help," one mechanic replied hesitantly. "He knows his way around the system better than anyone." Olivia's voice hardened. "This is not a carburetor issue. This is a multi-million-dollar engine. Get him away from that jet before he makes it worse." "Aye." Ethan straightened slowly, rain dripping from his hair, calm in the face of her fury. "The problem isn't mechanical," he said quietly. "It's in the fuel control software. There's a loop in the emergency override. The system is fighting itself." Olivia narrowed her eyes. "And you know this how? Did the engine whisper it to you?" He said nothing more, just stepped back and let her check for herself. Moments later, her tablet confirmed his diagnosis. The same line of corrupted code appeared on her screen. Her throat tightened. Outside, thunder exploded, echoing her own frustration. Pride screamed at her to ignore him, to wait for her certified team. But every second lost meant Bennett's patience thinning and her company's reputation slipping. Through the roar of the rain, Bennett's voice cut in. 40 minutes, Olivia, then I'm taking my business elsewhere." Her heart pounded. She looked at Ethan, the man she had mocked in front of a crowd. His eyes were steady, confident, waiting for her decision. Finally, she said the words that would change everything. "Fix it." Ethan nodded once, stepping toward the engine as the storm raged on, lightning flashing above them like a silent countdown. The roar of the jet engine filled the hangar like a heartbeat returning to life. The mechanics cheered, relief washing over the room as the sleek aircraft came alive under the flickering stormlights. Carter Aviation had been saved in the final seconds. But Olivia Carter could not celebrate. She stood still, drenched and breathless, her eyes following Ethan Cole as he quietly packed his tools into a worn canvas bag. No victory speech, no pride, just quiet professionalism, as if saving a multi-million-dollar jet was routine. When the last crew member left, Olivia stepped into the break room, searching for words that refused to come. Ethan stood at the sink, washing oil from his hands. His sleeves were rolled up, and under the soft fluorescent light, she saw it. Lines of intricate ink etched across his upper arm. It wasn't a tattoo of art. It was a schematic, precise, mathematical, impossibly familiar. Olivia froze. Her breath caught as recognition hit her. That's the PW-1000G schematic," she whispered. "That version was classified. Only 15 engineers ever had access to it." Ethan paused, glanced at her, then pulled down his sleeve slowly. 16, he said quietly. "I was the 16th, and I led that team." The air in the room seemed to thin. Olivia's mind raced, trying to align the image of the silent mechanic with the legend she had read about years ago in aerospace journals. Dr. Ethan Cole, the prodigy from MIT, the man who revolutionized turbine efficiency, the engineer who vanished without a trace. She stared at him, struggling to find her voice. "You disappeared. They said it was espionage, a failed government project." Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "No, my wife died. Brain aneurysm. One moment she was helping Grace with homework, the next, she was gone. I walked away from everything that didn't matter." The words hit harder than any thunder outside. Olivia looked at him, truly looked for the first time. The weariness in his eyes wasn't from labor. It was from loss. She wanted to speak, to apologize, but nothing felt right. All the years she had spent chasing power, approval, perfection, None of it seemed as strong as the quiet dignity standing in front of her. Ethan dried his hands, his tone calm but final. I chose to build something different. Not engines, a life. As he walked past her, Olivia's reflection stared back from the window. For the first time, the woman who once believed control meant strength felt a crack forming inside her carefully built armor. Outside, the storm was breaking, the rain slowed to a drizzle, and deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was only the beginning of something that would test everything she believed about success, loss, and what it truly meant to fly. The next morning, the rain had vanished, leaving behind a town washed clean. Maple Ridge shimmered under the soft glow of early sunlight. Olivia stopped by a small cafe near the airfield to clear her mind before returning to the city. Through the window, she saw him, Ethan Cole. He was sitting at a corner table with a young girl whose laughter carried across the room like music. Grace. Olivia hesitated. Something about the sight rooted her in place. Ethan's sleeves were rolled up, his expression gentle as he listened to his daughter animatedly describe something with her hands. He laughed, the kind of laugh that came from a place of peace, not performance. For a brief moment, the woman who built empires felt like an outsider peeking into a life that actually meant something. She watched as he wiped whipped cream from Grace's nose, as they clinked mugs together like a tiny celebration of their own. There was no boardroom, no audience, no competition, just love, steady and quiet. And in that quiet, memories stirred. She was 10 years old again, standing in a school auditorium with a blue ribbon in her trembling hands. Her science project, a model of a small jet turbine, had just won first place. She remembered scanning the crowd for one face. Her father's. He never came. That night, he had called her, voice brisk and distant. I saw the report. Good job. Remember, Carter Aviation doesn't fail. Then the line went dead. That sentence had shaped her entire life. She had built an empire to prove she could live up to that command. And now, watching Ethan with his daughter, she realized she had misunderstood everything. Success had never been about building the biggest company. It was about building someone's world. She blinked away the sting in her eyes as Grace hugged her father tightly before heading off to school. Ethan looked up then, noticing her through the window. Surprise crossed his face, followed by a polite smile and a nod. Olivia hesitated, unsure if she should approach. Part of her wanted to walk inside and thank him, maybe ask how someone could lose everything and still look so whole. But her feet stayed still. Instead, she turned away, her reflection following her in the glass. For the first time, the confident CEO looked fragile, human. Back in her car, Olivia gripped the steering wheel, staring at her trembling hands. The words echoed again in her head. Carter Aviation doesn't fail, but maybe failure was not the enemy. Maybe it was the path toward finding something real. As she started the engine, her phone buzzed with a new message from corporate headquarters. Another contract, another success. Yet for the first time, it didn't feel like victory. Outside the cafe, Ethan waved goodbye to his daughter, unaware that the woman watching him was beginning to question everything she had ever believed about success, family, and love. 3 weeks passed. The world kept spinning, but inside Carter Aviation, the calm was an illusion. A new crisis had arrived. The prototype hybrid jet, Olivia's pride, had failed its final test flight. The entire system had shut down mid-air before emergency protocols saved it from disaster. The board demanded answers, and the press had begun whispering. Olivia sat in her office, staring at the blinking red line on the report. Every attempt to replicate the issue had failed. None of her engineers could find the fault. Every hour lost meant more money, more doubt, more pressure. Her phone buzzed. The operations chief's voice trembled. We are grounded again. Olivia, the system crash traces back to the custom modifications. No one on the team is certified to repair them. Olivia closed her eyes. There was one name she hadn't dared to say aloud. Ethan Cole. By evening, her car was parked in front of a modest auto repair shop in Maple Ridge. Inside, The familiar clinking of tools echoed softly. Ethan looked up from under a lifted sedan, his expression both surprised and weary. "Miss Carter," he said quietly, "another luxury car problem?" "A jet," she replied. Her tone was calm, but her eyes carried the weight of desperation. "A serious one," he frowned. "You have a full team of engineers. Why come to me?" "Because they can't fix this," she admitted, "and I know you can." Ethan leaned against the car, wiping his hands. "I have responsibilities here. Grace gets out of school at 3. I can't leave her alone." Olivia hesitated. Then she said softly, "Bring her. The lounge has Wi-Fi. She can do her homework there. I'll make sure she's comfortable." He studied her for a long moment. The last time they met, she had looked down at him. Tonight, her voice held something new. Respect. When she added, "I'll triple your consultation rate." He gave a quiet, amused smile. "You researched my hourly wage?" "I research everything," she said. "It's what I do." A pause. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right." Hours later, they stood side by side in the silent hangar. The air was thick with the scent of fuel and rain from the open tarmac. Olivia had traded her blazer for coveralls, hair tied back, tablet in hand. Ethan crouched beside the engine, eyes narrowed in focus. For the first time, she wasn't the commanding CEO, and he wasn't the humble mechanic. They were equals, united by the hum of machinery and the thrill of solving something impossible. Their hands brushed once over the same control panel, and both pretended not to notice. The night stretched on, filled with quiet words, shared ideas, and a growing sense of something neither could define. When the engine finally roared back to life, Ethan looked at her. "Told you it was the modulation circuit." Olivia smiled for the first time in weeks. "You're insufferably right." And in that shared laugh beneath the flickering hangar lights, something changed. Respect had found its way to trust, and trust had started to feel dangerously close to something else. It was almost midnight when the last turbine cooled down. The hangar lights flickered, reflecting off the polished surface of the jet that now purred like a living thing. The crisis was over. Ethan gathered his tools in silence, exhaustion in every motion. Olivia stood nearby, watching him. Something about the sight made her chest tighten. For the first time, victory didn't taste like triumph. It tasted like gratitude. "You shouldn't drive this late," she said quietly. "Let me take you home." He hesitated, ready to refuse, but the fatigue in his eyes betrayed him. Finally, he nodded. The ride through Maple Ridge was quiet, the streets empty under soft yellow lamps. Raindrops clung to the windshield, glimmering like tiny stars. Neither spoke for a while, and yet the silence felt comfortable. When they reached his building, Olivia insisted on walking him upstairs. The apartment was small, but the moment she stepped inside, warmth wrapped around her like a gentle hand. The shelves were crowded with engineering manuals and children's books. Drawings covered one wall, planes, clouds, equations scrawled in colored pencil. In the corner, a little girl lay asleep on a small couch, her head resting beside a half-built model airplane. The nightlight painted her face in soft gold. Olivia stopped. For a long moment, she couldn't move. Grace's model was unlike anything she had seen, a delicate aircraft powered by a miniature solar cell, wings made of recycled foil. Next to it was a notebook filled with sketches and calculations written in a child's handwriting. "She designed that herself," Ethan said softly, placing his jacket on the chair. "Says she'll build engines that don't hurt the planet. Says my generation forgot to try." Olivia turned to him, her eyes shimmering. "She's brilliant." He smiled, tired but proud. "She's her mother's daughter." They stood there in silence, the soft hum of the city filling the background. For the first time, Olivia saw not the engineer, not the widower, but a man who had built something far greater than success. Her gaze drifted over the room again, its imperfections, its warmth, the quiet evidence of love in every detail. And for the first time in years, she felt small in the best possible way. "She reminds me of you," she said softly. Ethan looked at her, puzzled. "How so?" "The precision," Olivia replied. "The curiosity, the refusal to accept limits. He laughed quietly, a sound that filled the tiny room with life. Then he gestured toward the couch. "You can sit. I'll make coffee." She smiled. "At this hour?" "Engineers never sleep when there's something to fix," he said. And as the aroma of coffee filled the air, Olivia realized something extraordinary. The home of this quiet man and his sleeping daughter felt more alive than her entire penthouse. Something inside her shifted. The woman who had built a company was now standing in front of someone who had built a life. A week later, the city skyline glittered beyond Carter Aviation's headquarters. Olivia sat at her desk, staring at the proposal in front of her. The title read, "The Grace Initiative, a scholarship for girls in aerospace." For once, the document wasn't about revenue or contracts. It was about opportunity, about giving young girls a chance to dream beyond the sky. She signed it without hesitation, and when the pen lifted from the page, a quiet smile curved her lips. 2 days later, an envelope arrived. No email, no corporate header, just her name. Handwritten in clean block letters. Olivia Carter. Inside was a sketch, a new configuration for a hydraulic system, annotated in 2 sets of handwriting, one neat and technical, the other slightly uneven, clearly a child's. At the bottom were 5 simple words. "Grace thinks this might work." Olivia stared at it for a long time. The drawing wasn't just brilliant, it was alive. There was creativity in every line, heart in every calculation. That afternoon, she drove back to Maple Ridge. The small cafe near the airfield had become something of a meeting place. When she stepped inside, Ethan was already there, a mug of coffee in his hand, sunlight catching the edges of his hair. "I got your sketch," she said, holding up the paper. "Tell Grace she might be on to something revolutionary." Ethan chuckled. "She'll be thrilled. She already thinks you're her hero." Olivia's smile carried a warmth she rarely allowed herself to show. "I think she's mine," she said softly, her voice lighter than usual. What started as a technical discussion soon turned into something far more human. They talked for hours about engines, childhood dreams, and the strange paths that had led them both to this place. Between the laughter and the quiet pauses, the walls around them began to fall. For once, Olivia wasn't analyzing, explaining, or defending who she was. She was simply being, present, alive, and open. Ethan listened, not with judgment but with understanding, his calm presence grounding her in a way she hadn't felt in years. When she finally stood to leave, Ethan rose as well. Their eyes met and held, a silent conversation passing between them that no words could capture. "Same time next week?" he asked, his tone casual but his gaze steady. Olivia hesitated only a moment before smiling. "You read my mind." As she stepped outside, the sunlight wrapped around her like an embrace. The air felt different, softer, almost hopeful. She realized this connection between them wasn't just about work or shared intellect, it was something deeper. For both of them, it wasn't just collaboration, it was healing slow, quiet, and real. And as Olivia walked toward the fading afternoon light, she couldn't help but think that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The air that afternoon carried the scent of autumn and jet fuel. The last golden rays of sunlight spilled over Carter Aviation's runway, painting everything in shades of amber. The hangar doors were open, and the hum of the completed prototype faded into the distance like a satisfied sigh. Olivia and Ethan walked slowly along the empty tarmac. The day's work was done, but neither seemed ready to say goodbye. The wind brushed through Olivia's hair, and for once she didn't fix it. She simply let it flow. "This one's perfect," Ethan said, nodding toward the jet glimmering under the sunset. "You should be proud." Olivia looked at it, then shook her head gently. "I used to think success felt like this. Applause, headlines, milestones." Her voice softened. "But lately, I've realized something. Not everyone who has everything is truly happy." Ethan turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "And I've realized something too." She met his eyes, waiting. "That some people can still change," he said quietly. even after they've spent their whole lives above the clouds. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. The sound of the wind, the rustle of dry leaves, the distant hum of engines all faded away. They stood facing each other, the space between them small, but filled with everything that words couldn't hold. Olivia smiled first, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. Ethan smiled back, that same quiet warmth that had once melted her arrogance in a storm. No declarations, no promises, just a simple truth that lived in the silence between them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Olivia spoke again, her tone barely above a whisper. "You've changed the way I see everything." Ethan, he looked at her with that calm certainty she had come to depend on. "And you reminded me that dreams don't have to end when the workday does." They laughed softly. The sound was small but powerful, like two lives finding the same rhythm. When they finally turned back toward the hangar, the lights had come on inside, casting their shadows long and side by side. It wasn't a love story built on grand gestures. It was quieter, deeper, the kind that begins when two people stop pretending and start truly seeing each other. And as Olivia glanced at him one last time before stepping inside, she realized something beautiful. She wasn't afraid of slowing down anymore. 6 months later, the grand unveiling of Carter Aviation's new hybrid engine filled the company's largest hangar with golden light and the hum of anticipation. Cameras flashed, journalists gathered, and the air buzzed with excitement. But this time, Olivia didn't stand on stage alone. Beside her were Ethan Cole and a bright-eyed girl clutching a tablet, Grace. When it was Grace's turn to speak, the crowd went silent. The young girl stepped forward, her voice clear and full of wonder as she explained her small model of a clean energy aircraft. Behind her, Ethan watched with quiet pride, his eyes shining in a way no award could match. When the applause erupted, Olivia took the microphone. Her tone was calm, confident, and human. "Today, we celebrate not just innovation, but balance. From now on, Carter Aviation will launch a work-life balance program for all engineers who build our future while still having one of their own." The audience clapped again, louder this time. Flashbulbs flickered, capturing the moment as Olivia turned toward Ethan. Their hands met steady, certain. Outside the hangar, the prototype hybrid jet roared to life, its turbines spinning with a deep, clean hum. The aircraft lifted gracefully into the sky, sunlight glinting off its wings. Olivia looked up, her voice soft, carrying through the crowd. Not every engine needs to run at full power. Some only need to run just enough to take us where the heart wants to go. The jet climbed higher, disappearing into the blue. And beneath that open sky, 3 people stood together. A woman who had learned to slow down, a man who had learned to dream again, and a girl who would carry both their legacies into the future.